Disney Teaching Magic inside the Disney Youth Programs, episode 594.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
So over the summer, I got an incredible experience to kind of get a taste of several of the Disney youth programs that are down in Orlando. I know there's many different places that they have these youth programs. So I do want to give a disclosure that I was hosted for that event and got to tour that. But while I was there, I asked if we could get someone on the podcast to talk about how Disney uses and designs these engaging lessons that they have. So today, Aaron Joyner is with us. He's Youth Facilitation Manager and works with over 18 education experience across the Walt Disney World parks and resorts. So what is your classroom like there at Disney?
Thank you for having me, Vicki. So our classroom at Disney, for your listeners who've been there before, it's the entire theme park. All 4 Walt Disney World resorts, the theme parks, the hotels, everything that your listeners have encountered in the theme parks, that's our classroom. We are in the parks every day out there talking about the concepts that your teachers are covering in their classrooms and showing them the real world examples and how we use them every single day in our parks.
Give me some examples.
Sure. So, yeah, and like you said, we do have a hospitality program, but a lot of the programs that are much more popular, we have a lot of STEM programs. So we do programs on physics, properties of motion, light and sound waves. We have chemistry programs. We have history programs, leadership, teamwork, global citizenship, painting, photography, visual arts, animal sciences, environmental programs, conservation programs. It kind of runs the gamut.
So when you're designing these lessons, and again, I've been through several of your different lessons, and it's definitely not really lecture. It's really experience. Give me an example of something that you might do that really pulls kids into the lesson and makes a difficult concept real to them.
Our goal is not necessarily to showcase brand new ideas to these students. So a lot of times we find that is the case. But what we're really leaning on is the fact that the teachers are in the classroom. They spend all year working very hard to develop these concepts and give them to the students. And our goal is just to say, look, all of the things you're learning in the classroom, they're important. And there are real world applications for things that maybe you didn't understand or had an opportunity to think about. For example, in our properties of motion program, we talk about potential and kinetic energy. That's a concept that every student at some point in a science class has heard and then thought, okay, cool. I mean, that's how it works. But, whatever. I'm not going to be a scientist. I'm not going to go into NASA or anything. So I don't need to know that. And so what we do is we take them into the theme parks. We set up small sample roller coasters, have the students do their own experimentation. We lean on the students to give us the answers. We tell them, here are 3 roller coasters. Tell us how they work. Tell us why they work. And we find that when the students are challenged with that information, they're able to dig deep and find that they really do know this stuff. They don't think they do. We start and say, we're going to learn about physics. And there's always a couple groans and some eye rolls. And we promise them this is not going to be like you think it is. We're going to show you that physics is 1, important, and 2, a lot of fun. And so they build sample roller coasters. And then after they've done these hands-on experiments, we have to show them, what the Disney theme parks and our Disney Imagineers are able to do and take them on one of our roller coasters like Space Mountain and showcase firsthand the properties of science and motion and Newton's laws and how those things make a fun experience and great attraction.
Yeah, and that was one of the ones I got to go through. And for me, a lot of the concepts that were difficult for me to understand made a whole lot more sense because I not only, like you said, played with the model roller coasters, but went through it myself. And that was fascinating. It just made it real. Now, I'm also fascinated by, when we did the Broadway and we did, several of those things. But I'm also fascinated by the animal sciences and what you do with that. Could you give us a description of how you help some of those concepts come alive?
Sure. So, we've got great teams that take care of a lot of our animals, both at Animal Kingdom and at the Seas with Nemo and Friends. And we know that there are a lot of students who are very interested in those subjects. So we want to show them firsthand that there are a lot of ways that students can be involved and help animals, help the environment, and showcase the importance that conservation is from our perspective. So we have programs that go into the Seas with Nemo and Friends, which is one of the largest aquariums in the country. And we take them and show them, let's talk about how this works. How does the water quality, it's not just pour a whole bunch of water in a big tank and dump some fish in and call it a day. There's a lot that happens there. There's water quality. There's fish that we have to pay attention to. We have to make sure that they can live together in a harmonious environment, make sure that they stay entertained. We have plenty of cast members that do a lot of research on the animals and with the animals to make sure that we as individuals can continue to learn and grow and share that information with peers around the world. So we have programs that talk about careers in zoological fields, careers in marine biology, programs at Disney's Animal Kingdom that talk about the importance of conservation and what students can do in their everyday lives back at school and in their community to help promote these ideals and help make a better community for everybody.
Now, there's another angle that I want to get, and that's because it relates to what we teach in schools. Now, you have a leadership strand, and I was interested because one of the people involved with the Disney Youth Program actually said that she went through the leadership, and that was one of the most transformational things that she'd ever been through. You don't lecture. And I think that's one of the things that we have to get past in school, that, if you're going to teach leadership, you don't just stand up in front and lecture to them about leadership. What do you do?
Something that I think a lot of your teachers are familiar with is we're facilitating to these students. Our job is to say, look, we, the Walt Disney Company, have some knowledge on these subjects, but we also know that these students come with their own knowledge. And our goal is to kind of pull that knowledge out of them through conversation. So, we question them a lot. We push the ideas that they have and say, okay, for the Walt Disney Company, we have leaders, lots of leaders that we think are very successful. What makes a successful leader? You tell me, because you know the answer. The students know this stuff. They've had good leaders, they've had bad leaders, they've had good teachers, and they've had teachers they haven't enjoyed. And they know what it is that they liked or didn't like and what worked and didn't work for them. And we challenge them to take that. Tell me what worked for you. Why do you think that worked? How did that work for you? What if you were the leader and you were in this situation? How would you do those things? What would you do to fix this? And especially a lot of our older students who are starting to go into the job market, our seniors who are looking at going into colleges, they're already thinking about these kinds of things. They have peers that they're leaders for. They're leaders in group projects. They're leaders at work, or they have leaders at work. So they have these experiences. Our goal is just to say, share these experiences with us and let us help you shape those a little bit, because a lot of times all it takes is someone to say, you know the answer. You just don't know that you know the answer. So let us get you to that point. And we give them the opportunity to have those discussions and really work through some of those tough things in a safe environment where there isn't a wrong answer. If you say something, we'll say, okay, that's a good idea. Let's build on that. What else can we do? And we work with the group. And then specifically in our leadership program, after we cover a lot of these concepts with them, and we give them the opportunity to meet with a salaried Disney leader, and then they can pose the questions that they have, the problems, the concerns, the dilemmas, and say, how do you deal with this? When you have a peer you don't get along with, which happens to all of us at some point in time, how do you work through that stuff? When you have a leader that you don't get along with, how do you do that? How do you do discipline? How do we cover all those things, and they get the opportunity to ask someone point blank with no prompting from any of our facilitation cast, and so that we can say, look, we've been talking about these concepts this whole time. Let's hear it from the mouth of someone who lives these concepts. And if I'm wrong, they'll say it. But over and over again, they reaffirm the things that we cover, and it helps these students to be able to talk face to face with someone with no expectations, with no concerns of, well, if I ask the wrong question, then I'll get in trouble or I'll be embarrassed by this. It's a safe environment, and everyone can ask all the questions and get the answers that they want out of that.
And I think, Aaron, these are concepts that we can apply in our everyday classrooms as we're teaching. And, the storytelling that you use, that is a big part of what I experienced when you and the others took me through the program, was just the storytelling and plus getting kids into a different place. These are some fantastic ideas. Aaron, I appreciate you taking the time to kind of take us into, the magic, some of the magic behind your Disney youth programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
Today, your challenge is to look at what you're teaching and how can you make it real world? How can you teach leadership and facilitate? And, sometimes we have to benchmark ourselves and take a look at what works. And I'll tell you that when I rode Space Mountain early in the morning, and then I went out and we had these little roller coasters that we made of different heights, and we were supposed to project the safety of the marble that was rolling down them. And then we had to project make a hypothesis about Space Mountain. It was just a really cool, awesome learning experience. Going up underneath the Haunted Mansion and learning about the different methods of lighting and standing under there and hearing and seeing everything behind that ride. It taught me so very much. So think of ways in your classroom, even if you can't travel to Disney, that you can go behind the scenes, behind the magic of how things work, because there are a lot of experiential lessons that we can learn here. And if you get a chance, head on down and participate in the Disney youth programs. I was particularly intrigued by the programs that maybe you haven't heard a lot about. They have a digital photography program. They have some other really cool program with artists. But going in the park before everybody else was there and learning things, that was just really awesome. Of course, they have their theater and their music programs. I know my school participates in that. Just a lot of cool things that they have. But also we can apply what they use and apply that magic.